Inside an opulent villa on a secluded island in Fiji, something unimaginable was happening. Beneath the glow of soft candlelight and the sound of gentle ocean waves, a honeymoon dream was spiraling into a nightmare. Christe Chen, a vibrant 36-year-old pharmacist, lay motionless on the floor. Blood pooled around her lifeless body. Her husband, Bradley Dawson, was gone. The villa's door slammed shut as he vanished into the night, leaving behind a chilling scene of violence and unanswered questions. Turtle Island in Fiji was supposed to be paradise, an exclusive sanctuary for the newlyweds to celebrate their love. But in the blink of an eye, this tranquil resort turned into the backdrop of a horrific crime. A young woman with her whole future ahead of her was gone, and the man who vowed to cherish her forever had fled into the darkness. Who could have imagined that a romantic honeymoon would end in such a brutal tragedy? How does a love story devolve into murder? And why did Bradley Dawson, the man who called Christe his everything, abandon her without a word? As investigators pieced together the events of that night, a series of shocking details emerged. An argument over dinner, a violent altercation, and a desperate attempt to escape justice. Bradley's actions after Christe's death only deepened the mystery. He didn't just leave the villa, he disappeared into the island's dense jungles, leaving behind his wallet, his passport, and a trail of confusion. The once loving husband was now a fugitive, and police raced against time to track him down. This case isn't just a story about a murder. It's about how love, betrayal, and violence can erupt in the most unexpected of places. What really happened inside that villa? What drove a man to betray the woman he had just promised to love forever? Before we unravel the chilling truth behind this case, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment with your thoughts. What would you have done in Christe's shoes? Do you think justice will be served? Hit the like button if you want more gripping stories that uncover the darkest corners of the human experience. Stay tuned, because even in paradise, shadows can hide the darkest secrets. Christe Chen and Bradley Dawson seemed like the ideal couple. Christe, 36, was a vibrant pharmacist with a successful career and a passion for travel. Known for her radiant smile and kind heart, she had a way of leaving a lasting impression on everyone she met. Bradley, 38, was a quiet but charming IT professional who worked for a children's nonprofit organization. Together, they appeared to embody a modern love story, professionally accomplished, deeply in love, and ready to begin the next chapter of their lives. Their wedding was a private but joyous affair, celebrated with close friends and family in Tennessee. It wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect for them. Just weeks after tying the knot, the couple boarded a flight to Fiji, eager to celebrate their honeymoon in one of the most luxurious and exclusive destinations in the world. The setting couldn't have been more idyllic. Turtle Island Resort, nestled in the heart of Fiji, is an all-inclusive paradise. With only 14 private villas, it offers the ultimate in seclusion and intimacy. Christe and Bradley's villa, perched along the turquoise shoreline, was a sanctuary of luxury. It had every amenity imaginable: spacious rooms, a private plunge pool, and breathtaking views of the Pacific Ocean. It was the kind of place where love stories flourish. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. What started as a dream honeymoon quickly turned into something far more sinister. Reports suggest that tensions between Christe and Bradley were already brewing when they arrived at Turtle Island. Staff at the resort noted subtle but telling signs: a strained silence during meals, distant body language, and a tension that seemed to linger just beneath the surface. On the evening of July 8th, the couple attended a communal dinner with other guests. What happened during that dinner remains unclear, but witnesses later reported hearing raised voices coming from the couple's villa shortly after they returned. By the early hours of July 9th, the unthinkable had happened. Christe Chen was dead. The discovery of her body the next morning sent shockwaves through the resort. A staff member, concerned after noticing that the couple had missed breakfast, went to check on them. What they found was a gruesome scene. Christe's lifeless body lay on the floor of the villa, her injuries indicating a violent struggle. Bradley Dawson was nowhere to be found. Bradley's disappearance only deepened the mystery. His belongings, wallet, phone, and passport were still in the villa. It seemed as though he had fled in a hurry, leaving behind everything but the clothes on his back. As news of Christe's death spread, the serene atmosphere of Turtle Island dissolved into chaos. Guests were questioned by authorities, the villa was cordoned off as a crime scene, and a manhunt for Bradley began. Fiji's lush, dense terrain became both an obstacle and a potential hiding place. For hours, Bradley's whereabouts remained a mystery. How had he vanished so quickly and without a trace? Did he have a plan, or was his escape an act of desperation? The news of Christe Chen's murder quickly made international headlines. What made this case so gripping wasn't just the brutal nature of the crime, but the stark contrast between the couple's outward appearance and the dark reality that had unfolded behind closed doors. Turtle Island, once a symbol of luxury and romance, became synonymous with tragedy. Social media erupted with theories and speculation. Who was Bradley Dawson, really? Did he plan this murder, or was it a moment of uncontrollable rage? And most importantly, why did this happen? As details of the case began to emerge, they painted a chilling picture of a honeymoon that had gone catastrophically wrong. What should have been a time of celebration had become a nightmare, and the manhunt for Bradley Dawson was now a race against time. Christe Chen's murder wasn't just a tragic loss of life, it was a reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control. For many, this case raised broader questions about trust, love, and the hidden dynamics of relationships. How well do we really know the people we choose to share our lives with? What warning signs go unnoticed until it's too late? The search for Bradley Dawson would soon lead to shocking discoveries. But for now, the world could only wait and wonder, what really happened on Turtle Island? Christe Chen was the kind of person who left a mark wherever she went. Born and raised in a loving family in Memphis, Tennessee, she was a bright and ambitious young woman with a kind heart and an infectious smile. Christe's upbringing was shaped by strong family values, a love of education, and a passion for helping others. Her parents often described her as the light of their lives, always cheerful, thoughtful, and full of dreams. Christe excelled academically, earning a pharmacy degree from the University of Tennessee. Her dedication to her career was undeniable. As a pharmacist, Christe found purpose in improving the health and well-being of her community. Her colleagues and patients admired her for her diligence, compassion, and unwavering commitment to her work. Beyond her professional life, she was a woman of many talents and interests. Christe was known among friends as a free spirit with a love for adventure. Whether it was hiking, traveling to new destinations, or trying exotic cuisines, she had an insatiable curiosity about the world. Her Instagram feed was a testament to her zest for life, filled with snapshots of her travels, her friends, and the occasional culinary creation from her kitchen. Her adventurous nature was paired with a strong sense of independence. Friends recall how Christe often spoke of her dreams to see the world, build a thriving career, and create a life filled with meaning. She was someone who balanced her ambitions with a deep appreciation for life's simple joys, family dinners, long conversations with friends, and spontaneous weekend getaways. When Christe met Bradley Dawson, it seemed like fate had brought them together. Friends and family initially saw the relationship as a perfect match. Bradley's quiet charm complemented Christe's vibrant personality. While their love story wasn't without its challenges, Christe believed in their future together. The couple's relationship moved quickly. After a relatively short courtship, they decided to tie the knot. Christe's loved ones had their reservations, worried that she might be rushing into something too soon. But Christe was confident in her choice, believing she had found someone who shared her dreams of building a life together. Their wedding was a simple but joyous celebration. Christe glowed with happiness, dressed in a white gown that symbolized the promise of a new beginning. For her, the honeymoon in Fiji was the cherry on top, a chance to start their life as husband and wife in one of the world's most beautiful places. Despite the picture-perfect exterior of Christe and Bradley's relationship, there were cracks that few people saw. Bradley's quiet demeanor, which initially seemed endearing, began to reveal a darker side. Friends noticed subtle signs of tension, moments where Christe seemed to hold back her true feelings. While Christe rarely spoke about any issues in their relationship, there were fleeting hints that all was not as perfect as it seemed. A close friend recalled a conversation where Christe admitted that Bradley had a temper, but she downplayed it, chalking it up to the stress of planning their wedding. Christe's independent spirit occasionally clashed with Bradley's need for control. Small disagreements began to surface, disputes about how to spend their time, decisions about their future, and even trivial matters like where to eat. But Christe, ever the optimist, believed they could work through their differences. Christe's death sent shockwaves through her community. Her colleagues at the pharmacy mourned the loss of a talented professional who had so much more to give. Her friends struggled to comprehend how someone so full of life could be gone so suddenly. Her parents, devastated by the loss of their only child, described Christe as their pride and joy. They were heartbroken, not just by her death, but by the violent circumstances surrounding it. For them, the honeymoon in Fiji was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter in Christe's life, a chapter filled with love, happiness, and possibilities. Instead, it ended in tragedy. Even in the face of this unimaginable loss, Christe's loved ones have worked to honor her memory. Her family has shared stories of her kindness, her ambition, and her unwavering spirit. They've spoken about her dedication to helping others, and the way she brought joy to everyone around her. Christe's story is one of promise, a life that was brimming with potential, cut short far too soon. She was a daughter, a friend, and a professional who touched countless lives. As we delve deeper into the events that led to her untimely death, we're reminded of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing the people we hold dear. The morning of July 9th, 2022, began like any other at Turtle Island Resort. The staff moved about their tasks, ensuring the exclusive guests were treated to their usual luxury: breakfasts prepared with fresh tropical fruit, the sound of the ocean gently lapping at the shores, and a tranquil atmosphere that seemed untouched by the world. But something was amiss in one of the 14 private villas. Christe Chen and Bradley Dawson, honeymooners who had arrived just days earlier, had not appeared for breakfast. Initially, this wasn't alarming. The privacy of the villas allowed couples to enjoy meals in their rooms if they wished. But as the morning progressed, staff grew concerned. Housekeeping knocked on the door of Villa 11, expecting to deliver the couple's usual service. No response. They waited, knocked again, and called out for the couple. Still, nothing. A growing unease began to settle. The staff decided to enter the villa. What they found inside would forever change the serene reputation of Turtle Island. The moment the door swung open, the staff knew something was terribly wrong. The room was eerily quiet, and the pristine luxury of the villa was now tainted with chaos. Christe Chen's lifeless body lay on the floor, partially obscured by shadows. Blood stained the once immaculate tiles, pooling beneath her. The scene was harrowing. Christe's body bore clear signs of a violent struggle. Her injuries suggested a physical altercation that had escalated to a devastating end. The surrounding room showed signs of disarray. Furniture slightly displaced, items scattered. It was clear that whatever had occurred here had been sudden and brutal. But where was Bradley Dawson? The man who had checked into this villa with Christe just days earlier was conspicuously absent. The resort management wasted no time. They immediately contacted local law enforcement, reporting the grim discovery. Within hours, the once secluded island resort was flooded with police officers, forensic investigators, and local authorities. The villa was cordoned off, and a thorough examination of the scene began. As investigators worked to collect evidence, a troubling question loomed over the case. Where was Bradley? His belongings, his wallet, phone, and even his passport were still inside the villa. It seemed improbable that he could leave the island without them. The resort staff recalled seeing Bradley the night before, dining with Christe and other guests at a communal dinner. They also mentioned hearing raised voices later that evening, coming from Villa 11, but no one could recall seeing him after that. Turtle Island is a remote paradise surrounded by dense jungle and endless stretches of ocean. Bradley's disappearance posed a logistical challenge. If he had fled the villa on foot, the thick vegetation of the island offered countless places to hide. If he had ventured toward the ocean, the currents and vast expanse of water made it nearly impossible to track his movements. Police and resort staff launched an immediate search. They combed through the jungle, checking for any sign of a trail, footprints, or disturbed foliage. Boats were deployed to search the waters surrounding the island. The tranquil paradise had become a sprawling crime scene. As investigators examined the crime scene, they began piecing together the events of that fateful night. Witnesses from the resort provided key insights. A few guests recalled hearing muffled shouting and loud thuds coming from the villa late at night. One guest, staying in a nearby villa, reported hearing what sounded like someone pacing frantically. The staff also noted that Christe and Bradley had seemed tense during dinner that evening. Christe, usually vibrant and outgoing, appeared quieter than usual. Bradley, on the other hand, was described as distant and brooding. The timeline suggested that whatever had occurred between the couple had escalated quickly once they returned to the villa. Investigators found no signs of forced entry, ruling out the possibility of an intruder. This was no random act of violence. It was personal. The search for Bradley intensified. With each passing hour, the urgency grew. If he was on the island, he couldn't hide forever. But if he had managed to leave, the chances of finding him diminished with every moment. The breakthrough came later that day. Police discovered Bradley on a neighboring island, attempting to make his way back to the mainland. He had managed to flee Turtle Island using a kayak, paddling across the waters in a desperate bid for freedom. When officers approached him, he appeared disheveled, sunburned, and visibly shaken. Bradley's capture marked a turning point in the case. As he was escorted back to Turtle Island, the mystery of Christe's death began to unravel. What had driven him to such desperate measures? And more importantly, what had truly happened inside that villa? The discovery of Christe's body and Bradley's flight sent shockwaves through both the resort and the wider world. Guests who had shared meals with the couple just days earlier were horrified. Many struggled to reconcile the cheerful, loving image Christe and Bradley had projected with the horrific reality of what had transpired. For Christe's family, the news was devastating. Their daughter, who had just embarked on a new chapter of her life, was gone. The violent nature of her death only deepened their pain. The tragedy felt incomprehensible, a life filled with promise, cut short in the most brutal way imaginable. As Christe's body was transported off the island for further investigation, Bradley was taken into custody. The once idyllic Turtle Island, known for its seclusion and romance, was now the epicenter of a global media frenzy. The stage was set for a legal battle that would captivate the world. Questions remained. Was this premeditated? Or did a moment of rage spiral out of control? What would Bradley say in his defense? And most importantly, would justice be served for Christe Chen? The discovery of Christe Chen's body in the luxurious villa on Turtle Island sent law enforcement into high gear. Forensic experts were flown in from Fiji's mainland to assist the local authorities in processing the scene. Every inch of Villa 11 was meticulously examined. Blood samples were collected, fingerprints were lifted, and photographs captured every angle of the room where Christe's life had come to a tragic end. The evidence told a harrowing story. Christe had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, and the presence of defensive wounds on her arms suggested that she had fought for her life. The investigators concluded that the struggle had been violent, brief, and tragically fatal. Bradley Dawson's absence loomed large over the investigation. While every indication pointed to him as the prime suspect, the team knew they needed more than circumstantial evidence to build a strong case. Their immediate priority was to uncover every detail of what had occurred that night. The resort's guests and staff became crucial sources of information. Investigators conducted hours of interviews, hoping to reconstruct the events leading up to the crime. Witnesses painted a picture of an escalating conflict. Guests who dined with Christe and Bradley on the evening of July 8th recalled the couple's behavior. While Christe was polite and engaging, Bradley seemed withdrawn, offering little conversation. Some guests mentioned noticing a tense exchange of glances between the two, subtle but enough to suggest that not everything was perfect in paradise. Resort staff corroborated these observations. One server recalled seeing Bradley abruptly leave the table during dinner, his expression dark and his movements agitated. Christe, visibly upset, followed shortly after. By the time they returned to their villa, the tension had become impossible to ignore. Bradley's disappearance following the crime added an air of mystery to the investigation. His belongings were still in the villa, raising questions about his plans and state of mind. Investigators theorized that he had fled in a panic, using whatever means were available to escape the island. The kayak he used was found abandoned on the shores of a neighboring island. Investigators noted that the attempt to leave Turtle Island by sea was both desperate and reckless. The distance, combined with the unpredictable ocean currents, made such a journey perilous. Bradley had left behind not only his wife but also any semblance of rationality. When Bradley was apprehended, he offered little resistance. Disheveled and sunburned, he was a stark contrast to the composed, confident man Christe had married. His initial statements to police were vague and contradictory. Bradley claimed that the couple had been drinking heavily on the night of the incident. According to him, an argument had escalated, but he denied any involvement in Christe's death. He admitted to fleeing the scene but maintained that he was not guilty of murder. Investigators were skeptical. Bradley's flight was damning evidence in itself, suggesting guilt rather than innocence. Still, the team knew they needed more. The forensic team worked tirelessly to connect the physical evidence to Bradley. Blood spatter analysis indicated that Christe had been struck multiple times. The injuries were consistent with an object found in the villa, a heavy, decorative lamp that had traces of blood and hair. Fingerprints found on the lamp matched Bradley's, providing a direct link to the weapon. Additionally, the autopsy revealed that Christe's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, confirming the violent nature of the attack. Further analysis of the villa showed no signs of forced entry or the presence of any third party. This was not the work of an intruder. It was a domestic incident that had spiraled into murder. In the digital age, technology became a vital tool in piecing together the timeline of events. Investigators accessed Bradley and Christe's phones, looking for text messages, call logs, or social media activity that might provide clues. What they found painted a troubling picture of the couple's relationship. In the days leading up to the murder, Christe had exchanged messages with a close friend, expressing concerns about Bradley's temper. While she didn't go into detail, the messages hinted at a tension that had been brewing beneath the surface. Bradley's phone, on the other hand, revealed little. Investigators noted that several messages and call logs appeared to have been deleted, further raising suspicions. As news of the case spread, international media outlets picked up the story. The juxtaposition of the crime's brutal nature against the idyllic setting of Turtle Island captivated the public's imagination. Pressure mounted on the Fijian authorities to ensure a thorough investigation. The resort, known for its exclusivity, faced scrutiny as well, with questions raised about the safety and security of its guests. Back in the United States, Christe's family called for justice. Their heartbreak was compounded by the knowledge that their daughter had been killed by someone she trusted most. They vowed to do everything in their power to see that Bradley Dawson was held accountable. For those who knew Christe and Bradley, the news was incomprehensible. Friends and colleagues struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the crime he was accused of committing. Bradley's co-workers described him as quiet and professional, someone who had always seemed mild-mannered. Christe's friends, however, began to share stories that hinted at a different side of their relationship. While Christe rarely spoke openly about any problems, there were moments when she hinted at feeling controlled or overwhelmed by Bradley. By the time Bradley was formally charged with Christe's murder, the evidence against him was overwhelming. The physical evidence, witness testimonies, and his suspicious behavior painted a clear picture. Yet, questions lingered. What had truly happened in the moments leading up to Christe's death? Was this a crime of passion, or was there something more premeditated at play? As the investigation continued, investigators prepared for the next phase of the case, turning their findings into a prosecution that would seek justice for Christe Chen. When Bradley Dawson was finally apprehended and taken into custody, investigators wasted no time in seeking answers. In the stark confines of a police interrogation room, the man once celebrated as a loving husband now sat as the primary suspect in a brutal murder. Bradley's demeanor during questioning was erratic. At times he appeared calm, almost detached, recounting the events of the previous evening as though they were a mundane argument. But when pressed about Christe's death, his story began to falter. He offered conflicting accounts, first claiming he had left the villa to cool off after a heated argument, then suggesting he couldn't remember what happened after their fight. The most troubling moment came when Bradley suggested Christe's death might have been accidental. Maybe she fell, he muttered at one point, a weak attempt to shift the narrative. Investigators noted his lack of remorse and evasive answers, further solidifying their belief in his guilt. As part of the investigation, experts began analyzing Bradley's psychological state. His actions after Christe's death, fleeing the scene, abandoning his belongings, and attempting a dangerous escape by kayak, suggested panic and a desperate attempt to avoid accountability. Friends and family who knew Bradley were interviewed, shedding light on a man who had always been reserved, even aloof. While many described him as kind and quiet, others hinted at a darker side. A former colleague revealed that Bradley had once been reprimanded at work for an angry outburst, though such incidents were rare. Psychologists assisting the investigation suggested that Bradley may have struggled with control issues. His behavior in the days leading up to the murder, as described by witnesses, hinted at a simmering frustration. The honeymoon, meant to be a joyous occasion, had instead magnified the cracks in their relationship. The results of Christe Chen's autopsy provided a chilling confirmation of the violence she endured. The medical examiner detailed multiple injuries, including severe blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with the decorative lamp found at the crime scene. The report also noted defensive wounds on Christe's forearms, indicating she had fought desperately to protect herself. One particularly damning detail was the extent of the injuries to Christe's skull. The force used was excessive, pointing to an attack driven by rage rather than a momentary lapse of control. For prosecutors, this autopsy report became a cornerstone of their case, proving the murder was not accidental or impulsive, but deliberate and brutal. Forensic psychologists played a significant role in analyzing Bradley's possible motives. They theorized that the escalating tension between the couple, combined with Bradley's potential control issues, may have led to a moment of explosive violence. While Bradley maintained that the argument had been minor, witnesses described the couple's relationship as strained even before their honeymoon. A behavioral analyst suggested that Bradley's decision to flee the crime scene was a clear indication of guilt. "Flight is the ultimate admission," one expert remarked. "It shows an awareness of wrongdoing and a refusal to face the consequences." The murder at Turtle Island sent shockwaves through the resort's management and staff. Known for its exclusivity and reputation as a haven for romance, the resort faced unprecedented scrutiny. Staff were questioned extensively, not only about the events surrounding Christe's death, but also about any possible lapses in security. How had Bradley managed to leave the villa undetected? Could the tragedy have been prevented? To preserve its reputation, the resort implemented immediate changes, including increased surveillance and more frequent check-ins with guests. Still, the damage to its image was significant. The once idyllic getaway was now forever tied to a horrific crime. As the investigation progressed, prosecutors worked tirelessly to compile a case that would leave no room for doubt. The evidence was compelling, but they knew they would face challenges in proving Bradley's intent. One key strategy was highlighting the timeline of events leading up to Christe's death. Witness testimonies, forensic evidence, and the autopsy findings painted a cohesive picture of a man whose frustrations had boiled over into deadly violence. Prosecutors also planned to use Bradley's flight against him, arguing that his attempt to escape was a clear indication of guilt. "An innocent man doesn't run," one attorney stated. Given the high-profile nature of the case, international collaboration became a critical component of the investigation. U.S. authorities worked closely with their Fijian counterparts to ensure that no detail was overlooked. Christe's family, based in Tennessee, provided additional context about her relationship with Bradley and shared insights into her state of mind before the honeymoon. This partnership ensured that the case was handled with precision, leaving no stone unturned. Despite the mountain of evidence against Bradley, certain questions remained unanswered. Why had he snapped that night? Was there a specific trigger, or was this the culmination of deeper, long-standing issues in their relationship? Bradley's refusal to cooperate fully with investigators only deepened the mystery. His silence on key details left both the authorities and Christe's loved ones searching for closure. By the time the investigation phase concluded, the case against Bradley Dawson was airtight. Forensic evidence, psychological analysis, and witness statements formed a damning narrative of a man who had betrayed the woman he claimed to love. But the true test of justice was yet to come. As the case moved toward trial, the world watched with bated breath. Would Bradley confess? Would he show any remorse? Or would he maintain his innocence, leaving the jury to decide his fate? The stage was set for a courtroom battle that would captivate the world, bringing Christe Chen's tragic story to its climactic chapter. The trial of Bradley Dawson began with a media frenzy. Reporters from Fiji, the United States, and beyond gathered outside the courthouse, their cameras trained on the man accused of murdering his wife on their honeymoon. For many, this case was not just about justice for Christe Chen. It was a gripping story of betrayal, violence, and the unraveling of a seemingly perfect couple. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Christe's parents sat quietly in the gallery, their faces etched with grief. Bradley, dressed in a crisp suit, appeared composed but avoided making eye contact with anyone. His defense team, seated beside him, prepared for a battle that would determine whether he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The prosecution wasted no time in laying out their narrative. In their opening statement, they described Bradley Dawson as a man whose temper and control issues had escalated into a violent outburst, culminating in Christe's brutal death. They painted a vivid picture of the events leading up to the murder, using forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and expert analysis to create a timeline that left little room for doubt. 1. Physical evidence. The prosecution introduced the decorative lamp found at the scene as the murder weapon. Forensic experts testified about the blood and hair found on the lamp, linking it directly to Christe's injuries. They also presented the autopsy findings, which detailed the blunt force trauma to Christe's head and the defensive wounds on her arms. 2. Flight as evidence of guilt. Prosecutors emphasized Bradley's decision to flee the scene, arguing that his actions were not those of an innocent man. Innocence doesn't run, the lead prosecutor stated. They showed evidence of Bradley's escape route, including the abandoned kayak, and highlighted the recklessness of his journey as further proof of his desperation. 3. Witness testimonies. Resort staff and guests testified about the couple's tense interactions during dinner on the night of the murder. Their accounts painted a clear picture of a relationship strained by conflict. Bradley's defense team faced an uphill battle. Their primary goal was to introduce doubt about his intent, arguing that Christe's death was a tragic accident rather than premeditated murder. 1. The accident theory. The defense claimed that Bradley and Christe had been drinking heavily on the night of the incident, which led to a heated argument. They suggested that Christe's fatal injuries could have been the result of an accidental fall during the altercation. 2. Challenging the prosecution's evidence. The defense attempted to discredit the prosecution's use of the lamp as the murder weapon, arguing that the forensic evidence was circumstantial. They also questioned the reliability of witness testimonies, suggesting that the accounts of tension between the couple were subjective interpretations. 3. Portraying Bradley as a flawed but loving husband. Bradley's lawyers painted him as a man deeply in love with his wife, but struggling with personal issues. They emphasized his clean record and lack of prior violent behavior as evidence that he was not capable of intentional murder. One of the most heartbreaking moments of the trial came when Christe's parents took the stand. Fighting back tears, her mother described Christe's dreams, her vibrant personality, and the devastating impact of losing her only child. The courtroom fell silent as Christe's father shared how their lives had been irreparably shattered. Their testimony was followed by a powerful statement from one of Christe's closest friends, who recounted the last conversation she had with Christe. "She told me she wanted this honeymoon to be a fresh start for their marriage," the friend said, her voice breaking. She truly believed in him, and he took that belief and destroyed it. When Bradley took the stand, the tension in the courtroom reached its peak. This was his chance to tell his side of the story, and everyone was eager to hear what he had to say. Bradley maintained his innocence, insisting that Christe's death was not intentional. He described their argument as heated but not violent, and claimed he had left the villa to cool off, only to return and find Christe unresponsive. When asked why he fled the scene, Bradley faltered. He claimed he panicked, overwhelmed by fear and confusion. "I didn't know what to do," he said, his voice trembling. "I didn't hurt her, I swear I didn't." But under cross-examination, the prosecution dismantled Bradley's testimony, pointing out inconsistencies in his account and highlighting the forensic evidence that contradicted his claims. In their closing arguments, the prosecution appealed to the jury's sense of justice. They reminded them of the overwhelming evidence, Christe's injuries, the weapon, Bradley's flight, and urged them to hold him accountable for his actions. "This was not an accident," the prosecutor declared. "This was a deliberate act of violence that ended a life full of promise." The defense, in their final plea, asked the jury to consider the possibility of doubt. They argued that Bradley's actions, though flawed, did not prove intent to kill. "He is not a murderer," the defense attorney said. "He is a man who made mistakes in the aftermath of a tragedy." After days of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. The courtroom was packed as the verdict was read. Bradley Dawson was found guilty of murder, a unanimous decision that brought both relief and heartbreak to Christe's family. The judge, addressing Bradley directly, condemned his actions as a betrayal of the vows he had taken. "You had a duty to protect your wife, and instead, you ended her life," the judge said. Sentencing was scheduled for January 2025, where Bradley faces the possibility of life imprisonment. For Christe's family, the verdict was a step toward closure, but the pain of her loss remained. They left the courtroom holding each other tightly, their strength a testament to their love for their daughter. The trial of Bradley Dawson was more than just a legal proceeding. It was a story that forced everyone to confront the fragility of love and the devastating consequences of unchecked anger. For Christe Chen's family, the guilty verdict brought some measure of justice, but it could never truly fill the void left by her death. Her parents, who had been pillars of strength throughout the trial, described their lives as forever changed. Christe was their only child, a bright, ambitious woman with a future full of promise. Her parents spoke publicly about the devastating grief they faced daily, but they also made it clear that they were determined to honor her memory. In the months following the trial, they established a scholarship in Christe's name at the University of Tennessee College of Pharmacy, ensuring that her legacy would live on through the education of others. "Our daughter was taken from us in the most unimaginable way," her father said in a tearful statement after the verdict. "But through this scholarship, her spirit will continue to touch lives." For Bradley Dawson, the courtroom verdict marked the beginning of a new chapter, a life spent behind bars. The sentencing in January 2025 is expected to confirm his fate, with a mandatory life imprisonment sentence looming. Reports from inside the prison described Bradley as reserved, avoiding contact with other inmates and maintaining a low profile. Friends and former colleagues back in Tennessee expressed a mix of shock and dismay, struggling to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the crime he committed. Bradley's defense team hinted at the possibility of an appeal, but legal experts suggested that the overwhelming evidence made it unlikely to succeed. For many, his actions, particularly his attempt to flee the scene, cemented his guilt beyond question. The murder on Turtle Island left an indelible mark on the resort's reputation. Once known as a haven for romance and luxury, it was now associated with a high-profile crime that shocked the world. The management implemented sweeping changes to its operations, including enhanced security measures and stricter monitoring of guests. However, the incident cast a long shadow, and bookings reportedly declined in the months following the murder. Local residents of Fiji also felt the impact. The case brought international attention to the small island nation, but it was not the kind of attention anyone wanted. Many expressed frustration at how their idyllic paradise had become a backdrop for tragedy, overshadowing the natural beauty and cultural richness of the region. The case of Christe Chen Dawson sparked conversations far beyond the courtroom. It highlighted the fragility of human relationships and the dangers of ignoring red flags in personal dynamics. For many, it was a sobering reminder that love, when intertwined with control and anger, can turn deadly. Advocacy groups against domestic violence use the case as an opportunity to raise awareness about the warning signs of abusive behavior. "This case is a tragedy, but it's not an isolated incident," one advocate stated. "We need to recognize the signs of control, manipulation, and emotional abuse before they escalate." Back in Tennessee, Christe's friends and colleagues rallied around her family, organizing vigils and fundraisers to support the scholarship established in her name. Her death left a void in her community, but it also inspired a renewed commitment to cherishing the people around us. One of Christe's friends summed it up best during a memorial service. "Christe lived her life with kindness, ambition, and love. If there's one lesson we can take from her loss, it's to honor her spirit by spreading kindness wherever we go." While Christe's life was tragically cut short, her memory lives on through the people who loved her and the impact she made on her community. The scholarship in her name ensures that her dedication to helping others will continue for generations to come. For Bradley Dawson, the story serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of how unchecked emotions and toxic behavior can lead to devastating consequences. As the world moves on from the trial, Christe's story remains a poignant example of the fragility of life and the enduring strength of love, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy. The story of Christe Chen Dawson is one of love, betrayal, and heartbreak, a vivid reminder of how quickly a dream can turn into a nightmare. Her life, filled with promise and kindness, was tragically cut short, leaving behind a legacy of hope and strength through the lives she touched. Bradley Dawson's actions serve as a stark warning about the destructive power of unchecked anger and control. The justice system has held him accountable, but the scars of this tragedy will linger forever. For Christe's family, for her friends, and for everyone who followed this haunting case. As we reflect on this heartbreaking story, we are reminded of the importance of cherishing our loved ones, recognizing warning signs in relationships, and seeking help when we need it. Christe's light may be gone, but her legacy lives on through the lives she inspired. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories that uncover the darkest corners of humanity. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think we can prevent tragedies like this in the future? Until next time, stay safe.